Salutations, industrialists! I'm Mark, a producer working on Gilded Destiny. Today, we're going to talk about resource points, which are the primary way a country can produce raw resources in Gilded Destiny. But before we get into details, let's review how the production of goods works for our game. Also, remember to wishlist Gilded Destiny on Steam, and to like and subscribe here on YouTube. This really helps get the word out about our game, and we really appreciate it. And follow us on Discord to keep up to date. You'll find all the links needed in our description as well. And now, onward with our dev diary. The most familiar way to produce goods is through buildings. These buildings utilize recipes, that is, production formulas, with inputs and outputs. When it comes to resource points, it's the same concept, but you're directly constructing the building on the map itself on top of a deposit of resources. The second way goods are produced is through smallholders and artisans. These represent the non-industrial side of your economy. They're autonomous and will create goods, sometimes constrained by the available resource points in their provinces and, of course, market demand. In Gilded Destiny, our smallholders and artisans provide a baseline of production, but it's simply not enough to keep up with the surging demand of the market, and certainly not enough to fuel industrialization. That's where buildings come in. Resource points are visually represented on the map as 3D models. There are two main ways to find out where they are. First, there's our handy resource map mode. You can see it here, and you'll be able to filter how much information you want at any given time. If you want to just view one resource across the world, you can, or if you want to find the combination of coal and iron for your industrial powerhouse region, that's also available to you. Second, you can find them through the construction menu, which is also where you'll construct the relevant buildings to extract or harvest those resources. To construct a resource building, simply open the construction menu and select the type of building you'd like to construct. Here, you'll notice two different icons. And just as a quick note, we'd like to remind you that the UI is still a work in progress. This icon here shows just the resource itself, indicating an untapped resource point. This means that you can build a new resource building here. The second icon shows a building icon alongside the resource, which means you already have a building here. If you select this, you'll be upgrading an existing building. And now, as an example, let's create a new coal mine right here in the province of Brandenburg in Prussia. You'd do that by opening the construction UI, select buildings, and then coal mines. You would then choose the coal deposit where you'd like to construct the building. With that overview in mind, let's talk about the design philosophy and rationale behind resource points. We had two main questions we wanted to answer. Why did we go with this approach, and how does it support our economic design philosophy? The primary reason for our resource point system is our hex map. Gilded Destiny offers a unique opportunity for more granular detail than other grand strategy games. This means we don't just tell you a resource exists in a province, we show you its actual and true location. Take a look at California here. Do you notice how the wine resource points are all concentrated in one spot? Those are the hillsides of Napa Valley, which, as some of you might know, is a renowned wine region even today. Or consider the aptly named Oil Creek in Pennsylvania, which, as you might have surmised, is the birthplace of the American oil industry. This level of detail doesn't just allow us to be more historically accurate in our research, it also adds immense flavor to both the provinces themselves and the specific geographical locations within them. Of course, this also adds a whole new layer of military strategy. Where things are in the world truly matters. This means where you defend or deploy your armies also matters. You might not find strategic value in defending the entirety of the Californian coastline, but rather in fortifying its cities and the river valleys where most of its riches lie. In terms of the economy, we're taking a slightly different approach with Gilded Destiny. Generally, we want to focus on the imbalances, monopolies, and the sheer impact of the Industrial Revolution on your economy. We envision each country and province having a more specialized contribution to the world's economy, rather than everyone doing a little bit of everything. What this means for resource points is that our background research focused on identifying significant producers and powerhouses of significant resources on a global scale. This model emphasizes scarcity, allowing us to make each province unique rather than a jack of all trades. We want provinces to be able to make big impacts in their own right. So, yes, in Gilded Destiny, we'll highlight the sheer monopoly that some countries had on certain resources. Think about the dominance of the American cotton industry, which provided at least 60% of the world's cotton during our time period, by means of using slaves, of course. The Pampas region in Argentina was a powerhouse for meat and livestock, as was Denmark with its bacon, and of course, returning to the United States, the American Midwest with its beef. As always, this adds another dimension to each province's potential, in that the province's worth is now not just its size and population, but also the density of resources within it. This means certain provinces are able to be known for their specializations, such as the Oaxaca region in Mexico, which was the main provider of red cochineal and blue indigo dyes. And take, for another extreme example, sulfur. During this period, Sicily was the #1 source of sulfur, providing more than 90% of the world's demand until the end of the century. While we do need to consider gameplay balance, it's important to remember that part of the fantasy of this period stems from these monopolies. We want to cater to these hyper-specialized expectations, where every country, every province, has a specific part to play in the global economy. This, of course, opens up new gameplay strategies. We can clearly see what places in the map provide the most sulfur. So, if you're out of sulfur, perhaps a diplomatic agreement, vassalization, or even the conquest of Sicily might be the most efficient way to satisfy your demand. With the distribution of resource points, one concern we always have is spam. If we want resource points to feel significant because not everyone has them, it means we need to be more selective about their placement compared to other games. In this case, yes, you'll find cotton and tea where they make historical sense, but it also means that wood, for instance, is restricted in places like the UK. This means that we don't just put wood resource down in locations that have trees, but where there was significant logging industry activity during this era. And for the UK, logging, for example, simply wasn't significant for various reasons, such as centuries of clearance and enclosures, its focus on agriculture to match its dense population, and the fact that it was simply cheaper to import timber from nearby Scandinavia and Russia, and of course its Canadian colonies, rather than starting its own logging industry. This means we very much focus on a maximalist approach to highlight the personality and the advantages of each province, which we recognize might feel a bit odd for some users. Take grain, for example. In Gilded Destiny, you don't simply build farms all over the place. Things like small-scale tenant farming and the like are already being done by smallholders. Instead, when the technology becomes available, you can build mechanized farms that make full use of the new machinery, such as threshers and reapers, in order to harvest crops and raise livestock on an industrial scale. This means that where grain appears on the map isn't just where grain can be grown, which is pretty much most of the world, and would go against our goal of avoiding spam and having distinct province personalities. Instead, it's about places that are either geographically breadbaskets, like Ukraine, due to the Black Earth region, or the American Midwest, or the North German Plain. As you can see, the North German Plain is the only place in Germany, or perhaps I should say Prussia, where you can have mechanized grain farms. Remember that smallholders can produce grain anywhere. But the reason Prussia has more grain is not just because of geography of the North German Plain, but in fact also a socio-political aspect we had to consider. So why does Prussia have more grain resource points than other countries? This is because the farmers in northern Germany had an agrarian structure of small to medium family farms. Smaller and divided estates generally meant more difficulty and resistance to mechanization, which required large swaths of land. Compare that with Prussia proper, which had been consolidated under the land-owning Junkers, not to mention their export-oriented view, which meant a more ingrained, mindset of producing more grain than you needed. On top of that, the support of the Prussian state meant that mechanized farming was historically more successful there. While this might seem to go against the concept of alternate history and potential, we decided to go in this direction because it ultimately makes our scarcity economics more apparent. Sure, if the socio-political changes were different, perhaps the rest of the North German plain could have mechanized as much as Prussia proper. But then we go back to the problem of having too many provinces that are similar to each other. Historical context aside, this also provides visual and gameplay differentiation, which we must always factor in. Case in point, now we can see some visual interest due to Prussia having more grain, which can imply more gameplay strategies to the player. With all that in mind, we need to talk a bit more about smallholders again. As mentioned throughout, smallholders are autonomous in what goods they can make and exist to provide a baseline of goods for the economy, with their role intended to be outcompeted as more industrial measures take place. Given our selectiveness about where resource points are, smallholders are driven by different rules that determine what goods they can create. For a small number of goods deemed essential, such as wood, grain, and meat, they are able to produce these goods anywhere. This represents that while yes, the North German plain is where you can build mechanized grain farms, it doesn't forget the idea that farmers have been growing crops all over Germany for millennia. However, when it comes to all other goods, such as those from plantations like tobacco, or ores, or furs, smallholders will only be able to create them if the province they are in also has that resource point. This prevents situations like, say, tea being cultivated in northern Scandinavia, where it would be either difficult or impossible to grow because of climate conditions there. This also allows us to emphasize our specialization and scarcity economy. It prevents situations where your country doesn't have to rely on trade with Asia because you can cultivate all of your tea at home via smallholders. Throughout the game, technology will impact how goods are produced and, of course, consumed. For example, early during the 19th century, oil, and especially whale oil, was used by the population for lighting. This in turn places an importance on the production of oil, which at the time is primarily produced through whaling ports alongside ambergris. However, due to many factors, not least of which was overfishing, the whaling industry quieted down as other means of producing oil became more efficient and more widely used during the 19th century. Kerosene, coal, and electricity soon replaced much of the prior role that whale oil would have filled earlier on. In the game, it's worth noting that the good oil encompasses oil of all sorts for the sake of simplicity, whether whale oil or crude oil. So, over the course of the game, as technology develops, oil will be produced by different sources and be consumed in different ways. So, to recap, resource points are how you directly build and expand your raw resource production on our detailed hex map, adding a new layer of strategic depth and historical geographic flavor. Our design philosophy emphasizes scarcity economics and unique province personalities, focusing on historical monopolies and significant producers rather than widespread, uniform resource availability. This means we're very selective about where you can build industrial-scale resource buildings. Smallholders provide a baseline for essential goods everywhere, but for all other goods, they're limited to provinces with specific resource points, further reinforcing our focus on specialization and trade. We're really excited about how this system will create a dynamic and historically rich economic landscape in Gilded Destiny, encouraging unique gameplay strategies where each country can find their own niche and role in the global market. Well, that's probably a good place to end for today. We hope you've enjoyed this Dev Diary, and as always, if you have any questions or comments, don't hold your horses and trot down to the comment section below. Lastly, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you have not done so already, add Gilded Destiny to your Steam wishlist. Until our paths converge once more, we bid thee farewell. May your destiny be a gilded one.